Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Yes, Steve Severenko from Aidoc. I help manage the partnership between Aidoc and AWS. We are heavy AWS users, and we'll get into that in just a minute. And we're here to talk about today about maximizing the value of AI in health systems. Aidoc, we're talking about clinical AI or clinical artificial intelligence. And Aidoc kind of defines that in a few different ways. First is finding data that is hard to find or unexpected and then making sense of that data. And then augmenting the physician quality by finding potential issues that may be occurring in that data, and then either activating care teams in an acute type of setting, or for those findings that we would call more subacute in nature, but still need to know about that, being able to manage those patients properly and be able to keep them in the health system and not have them leak out somewhere else. So obviously the challenges that are facing the healthcare industry, and probably talked about in a lot of different booths here today at HIMSS, obviously hospitals, they got to grow, but the margins are tight and they have to be able to reduce costs all at the same time. The data is there, right? But it was kind of a theme the last couple of years. The data is siloed and not necessarily being leveraged to coordinate care most effectively. And then the big theme the last couple of years has definitely been for the overworked physicians, sicker patients, and the technology not necessarily there to help kind of bridge that gap. And then finally, all this has to be done while providing positive patient outcomes, positive patient experiences. We recently read at Aidoc that a negative patient experience at a health system can cost that health system up to $400,000 over that patient's lifetime. And so a lot of us here, including Aidoc, by the way, and probably companies here, are hopeful that AI will help to at least alleviate some of those pressures that we see there. When we think about clinical AI or clinical artificial intelligence, we kind of tend to think about the following here. We think about algorithms, and more algorithms, right? So we're going to have an algorithm that's going to let me know that my chest X-ray for my patient is normal. We're going to have an algorithm that's going to let me know that my patient in the intensive care unit is deteriorating before I would normally know. We're eventually going to have, right, an algorithm for everything. We're going to create the Apple App Store, right, for healthcare. And we thought about platforming to a certain extent, right? It'd be good to have all the one place to be able to host all this, maybe one place to be able to procure all this. But that's pretty much kind of the general thinking when it comes to delivering AI in healthcare. And what we at Aidoc have seen in our reality, given our implementations, is this. So first of all, the algorithms might be smaller, but believe me, they're important, right? You can't expect to be sending data to somewhere and get some sort of AI result back without algorithms. So still very important. But what you see here is the platform growing in importance and in enabling scale. Couple things there. Enabling scale meaning be able to have handle multi-service lines within a hospital. Typical platforming right now is usually put in a single service line to a certain extent, multi-service line, and then having a platform purpose-built to be able to handle the variety of integrations you're going to need to be able to have with existing healthcare IT systems at your institution. And then finally, the part that's definitely not spoken about a lot is the human part of implementing AI, the people, process, and change management. You're going to have new users you're going to be engaging with when you deploy a clinical AI system. You're going to have workflows that you're going to be augmenting. You may have new workflows that you're going to be introducing. You're going to want to monitor the performance of that system. And you're going to want to be able to extract data to prove and show the value of the healthcare of the AI system that you're implementing. And so this is where Aidoc has lived. Aidoc is one of the most widely deployed clinical AI infrastructures that are out there today, where we've seen it all so far in terms of how to get clinical AI adopted in health systems. We're used in over 1,000 hospitals worldwide and 7 of the top 10 US, although I like to talk about the hospitals that fall out of that 7 of the top 10 ranking, because honestly, the more challenging the environment, as you'll see when we talk about this, the more challenging and more resource constrained the institution is, the better a solution like Aidoc is for that institution. We're the market leader in what we call FDA, AI, clinical AI clearances, and those AI clearances fuel up to 50 clinical use cases that Aidoc users can leverage. And then finally, again, kind of maybe unique still in the market is that over 70% of Aidoc is involved in some level of AI development, deployment, product management, engineering, et cetera. So a little primer on how Adok works. Obviously, most of us here know that in both an inpatient and outpatient setting, an imaging exam is probably one of the most performed procedures or exams out there. And so what Adok does is we're taking the data, and this is at a high level for right now, we're taking all the data from essentially all your scans. We are always on in the background. You're sending us virtually most of your imaging or exams. And we're looking at either the images themselves, the reports, or even relevant clinical EHR data. And then that data is then being sent up to the Aidoc cloud built on top of AWS. From there, that's where those 50 clinical use cases that I mentioned exist. And then we're going to return some sort of result back to your institution. And that result can kind of take one of two paths. For an acute finding, such as a pulmonary embolism, we'll use that example a couple times here today. Pulmonary embolism is a great clinical AI use case. We're going to be able to flag that and be able to send that back to the hospital and be able to activate the various care teams that need to be able to treat that patient. And then for the findings that are more subacute in nature, but again, you still need to know about them. So for instance, coronary artery calcification is something that's normally ordered by a physician. It's an orderable exam. Aidoc, again, in the background, we are always on looking for coronary artery calcification from your chest CTs as an example. We'll then flag that if it's relevant for instance, the cardiologist or radiologist. And if they choose to put follow-up recommendations in their report, we're looking at those follow-up recommendations and ensuring that those patients are kept and managed within the health system and not leaked out, and they're properly followed up on. You'd be surprised how many what we would call subacute or incidental findings are not properly followed up on within health systems. Now, in the background, this is everything that's happening right here. And kind of from the bottom-up perspective, again, we have the clinical information coming in, whether it's images from modalities, from PACS, order information, even relevant clinical EHR data. For you Epic users that are out there, we have invested the time and effort and cost into developing Firebase integration for the relevant data sets that Aidoc needs. So we can avoid any what we would call epic artistry that may need to normally take place if you didn't have that. So that data then hits what we would call our first level of AI at Aidoc, and that's our AI orchestration layer. AI orchestration does a lot of things, but a couple key things it does. First of all, it ensures that the right data is getting to the right AI solution. So if we have a lot of AI solutions, right, the 50 plus, we have data coming in from all over the place, you got to be able to make sure that you're able to aggregate that data, filter that data, normalize it, and make sure that it's getting to the right solution. No trivial task. The second part that our orchestration layer does, and this is part of that part that isn't necessarily thought of that much, is ensuring that the highest yield of that data is getting to the right AI solution. So for example, you could have a very highly specific, highly sensitive AI algorithm, but if only 75% of the exams or data is getting to that solution, well, how accurate is your AI solution really? So Aidoc has invested quite a bit on ensuring that not only is the right data getting to the right AI solution, but the highest yield of that data, ensuring that you have the broadest coverage possible. From there, we then have our AI solutions, again, across many service lines, radiology, cardiology, oncology. We'll get to that in a second. That's all built on the Aidoc cloud built on top of AWS. And then finally, the data, the result, we're finding something, we're sending that back, and all that data is now monitored by Aidoc. So this is the people process change management aspect that we talked about. Aidoc has a team of people, AI operations center, that it's monitoring both the input and output data that's coming into the system. And so, for instance, what if we notice at Aidoc that the performance of one of the algorithms is deteriorating over time? It's degrading, if you will. Well, you need to be able to monitor for what we call AI drift, be able to present you that data, and then be able to even make recommendations on mitigation strategies that we have used and seen and encountered over time. Or what if we notice that the yield, we talked about yield, the yield of data is not getting to the right solution at the right time? Did we introduce new scanners? Did we change slice thickness? There's a lot of different variables that can go in place. Again, Aidoc's collecting that data, presenting it to you, and offering mitigation strategies. Then finally, we're returning that AI result into the AI action layer, and then integrating that with a variety of healthcare IT systems that your institution already uses, meeting your clinicians where they are. Oh, sorry. And so this is where kind of it all comes together, right? So we have on the left grid up here, we have all the data sets coming through, whether it's from the modalities or the PACS or the electronic health record through various industry standards. That's feeding what we call the ADOC AIOS or AI operating system. That data is then obviously going through the AI operating system, and then it's what I would call hitting up our variety of AI solutions that, again, are multi-service line in nature, whether it's RAD, CARD, Pulmonary, et cetera. So data coming in, hitting up the AI solutions, and then we're returning some sort of result back to the existing healthcare IT systems at your institution. For instance, for a radiologist, that could be at the PACS or their work list. That could be in for stroke teams. That could be to care coordination modules, patient management applications as well. All of this underpinned, of course, with one unified user experience, performance monitoring, giving you maximum security, scale, performance, et cetera. So the one last, so one quick example that we have right here is for pulmonary embolism. So we talked about this earlier before, and this time it's for incidental pulmonary embolism. And so let's pretend we had a patient getting an outpatient scan at 5:15 p.m., for example. Normally, that patient doesn't have any symptoms. They're going up, they're getting sent home, and 2 days later, this could happen over a weekend or so on and so forth, the radiologist detects a pulmonary embolism. They got to bring that patient back in. By the way, no guarantee you're actually getting that patient back in. With Aidoc, in the Aidoc world, that same scan is being uploaded to the Aidoc operating system, located again on the AWS cloud, and that result for that pulmonary embolism is being sent back to the radiologist, prioritizing the work list. They're able to begin treatment with that patient right away if they need to. Just think about the downstream effects here of whether you recognize a potential critical pulmonary embolism in a patient 2 days later versus right then and there where you can begin treatment. Cedars-Sinai uses pulmonary embolism application. Before I get into the numbers there, really interesting quote from Dr. Pressman, who's the chair of imaging there, saying, in the not so distant future, it will be unthinkable to practice radiology without solutions like Aidoc. What have they seen with pulmonary embolism? Double-digit reduction in patient length of stay, double-digit reduction in intensive care unit stay, double-digit improvement in time to treatment decision, and countless hours saved coordinating care. We mentioned the variety of clinical use cases here that we have across a variety of service lines. So for instance, in neuro, we're working with stroke. And we talked about pulmonary embolism for the vascular teams, IVC filters. We talked about the coronary artery calcification example for patient management, keeping those patients in the health system. For women's healthcare, not only identifying breast lesions, being able to provide probability of malignant scoring. Intensive care units want to know about endotracheal tube malpositionings, fractures for the emergency department. And again, back to oncology, not only to be able to detect, measure, and compare nodules over time, but to manage those patients and keep them in the system. All those solutions, lots of publications have been written about Aidoc from our users. So as part of the subscription to Aidoc, we provide what we call research as a service. And so obviously our end users do all the publications, but Aidoc will provide the tools, the templates, the data, IRB support, and so on and so forth to allow our users to publish. And these are some of the results. We talked about length of stay. Hard to prove, right, with a lot of variables on length of stay. However, Cedars-Sinai was like what was life before Aidoc and what was length of stay after. Quality improvement, this is the big one. These are the misses that normally happen in an institution and what Aidoc is able to capture above and beyond what's normal without Aidoc in place. As you see, the more incidental the finding with the I in front of there, the more we're catching. And then finally, if we're able to see our sickest patients first, see our sickest patients first, read our sickest patients first, report our sickest patients first, and most likely treat our sickest patients first, our turnaround times are going to be quite drastic in terms of improvement. And then finally, what we have here is, of course, with all the what I would call quality goodness of what Aidoc brings to an institution and workflow efficiencies, at the end of the day, when you're investing in a new AI system, you need to be able to prove a return on investment into today's healthcare environment. And so Aidoc will work with you proactively, not reactively, but proactively on developing a comprehensive ROI analysis that focuses on cost reduction, patient outcomes, and actually quite a bit on revenue generation. All of that grounded in the latest research that's been written on Aidoc use cases by our end users, as well as the latest industry literature that's out there. And I wanted to thank you again, Steve Severenko from Aidoc, and I appreciate it.